Okay, so with everything going on with EDP445, which now means entering that prison, 4 plus 4 plus 5 equals 13. You understand what I'm saying? I wanted to talk about the, I suppose, like the ethical or moral implications of setting people up. And this is like going to be a deep topic. The reason is because a lot of people, I've seen at least, are saying, well, EDP was set up, so it's actually not his fault. So we want to actually talk about that and provide like a counter argument to that and explore this in more depth. Now, really quick, I've been following this very closely. She hasn't because she has a real life. So let me quickly explain the EDP thing. So EDP is I think he's 30 now. EDP, a 30-year-old man, was caught interacting with somebody he thought was a 13-year-old. Now, it gets really deep, and this would probably be the best ever example of grooming, because he wasn't just trying to engage in a way of getting like inappropriate pictures or even just sleeping with them. Those are still disgusting. He was literally grooming them into falling in love with him. He started out saying we should hang out just to hug, and as he pushed the boundaries of that person he thought was 13, it went from let's hug to, oh, maybe we could kiss as well, to, oh, maybe I can kiss your neck and nibble your ear, to let me, perform, acts on you. And it just continued to escalate. This happened over the course of like over a month. He literally also increased the language on her. Started from just calling her like, oh, a cutie, to like baby, to like my princess. And it evolved to eventually him telling her that he loved her. It felt incredibly methodical and something that I don't think was exclusive to her, but it seemed like he was trying to develop a literal relationship of emotional dependence onto him. There were a couple of instances where he made a couple of offhand remarks about her parents when she was like, oh, my parents are making me do homework, and he'd be like, yeah, man, her parents are stupid, her school doesn't do anything good for you, kind of like trying to in my interpretation, that's even worse. My interpretation, I think he was trying to boost the dependency on her potentially. There, for context, there was apparently a video he made months ago, somebody showed me. I was never able to confirm if he said this, but he was crazy, so I wouldn't doubt it, where he said he wanted to adopt a girl and raise her alone in the woods. So there's a lot here where like this is a legitimate instance of grooming, in my opinion. This goes far beyond just in like trying to solicit pictures from minors or even physically engage. This is emotional manipulation to me. So yeah, I don't know, hopefully that gives you the whole story. I'm just smiling. It's like, what a loser. Yeah. Now, the thing here is what we want to talk about is it immoral to set somebody up? Right? Now, as a general question, we're going to specifically talk about EDP, and then we're going to retract and talk about it generally speaking. In the case of EDP, 100% on board with him getting set up and caught. I think he should go to jail. I think that whatever happens to him in prison, that's on him. And I think that that's the one thing I love about the American justice system, is that people that we label as predators happen to also understand that there are people who are scum of the earth and deserve particular things. I don't want to say anything too intense. That's just my interpretation. I have a very harsh interpretation, but yeah. So when it comes to EDP, were pictures sent? He sent pictures of his genitalia. Did and him. She send pictures? I don't think so. Okay. Because so just for context, it was a decoy. So all the pictures that were sent, actually, I could probably quickly, we'll do this really quickly. Let me pull up a couple of instances of pictures sent. Because I think that if we do that, we can probably establish like what kind of pictures they are and whatnot. I'll show people on the camera as well so that they can okay. So he sent pictures of his no parts as well. Those aren't shown here. Just so you guys know, there is like all that stuff they have. They don't know if they want to release that. They're not going to release that, but there's also audio and video recordings that they haven't released. They're asking the decoy who did this, it wasn't actually her, if they're comfortable with it, because that's an intent, and that's also something we actually are going to talk about as well, as like, how do these decoys feel putting themselves in these situations? That's another thing we're actually going to discuss as well. So they didn't send any like pictures, but they did send stuff like this. It'll scroll up in a sec. Where like that, how old does that girl look? So this is a legal adult that they use a filter to make her look younger.
Oh,
very good, right?
Yeah. So who's this girl presenting this?
This is a different decoy who didn't go after this particular situation.
The girl presenting it. Wow.
Yeah, I think she's of legal age as well, but they look younger, which I think is part of, like, that's part of the thing, is like, oh, they look younger, and then they make themselves look even younger. Because when they're on the video call, they don't have that filter. Yeah. So they kind of like hide half their face, they were saying.
So, but again, so there was no, by the girl, decoy or whatever. Did they send any news?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I think that the reason that they didn't, I mean, I don't know. They never made it seem like they did. It's possible. Do you think that that makes it worse if they did?
No, I feel like this might get far into our conversation and at another point.
Sure, but just bring them out.
But it's like,
interesting. So what you're saying is, it actually, like, if they had sent something, you could get them on like theoretical possession of illicit child material.
No, and that's what I'm saying, because it's not child material.
Okay. So you're saying in court he has like that reason, that argument of like, well, technically they weren't.
If this is like the only
okay,
thing,
you're stop talking. Go ahead.
It's one thing.
Sorry, guys.
It's one thing if you messed me up, dude.
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn your filter on.
Like, it's one thing if they use this and then they're able to go deeper and then uncover other things. But if this is the only thing that you have, that he talked to a decoy and has pictures of an 18-year-old's boobies, like, he doesn't have any.
Yeah, that's true. So what you're saying is that if this goes to court, so I think that is where, because we were actually talking in the car about this a little bit, that's where it comes into play, where they really wanted to get him to go out there to meet somebody he thought was 13. And that's why they pushed so hard. So one of the things that was actually very well done is, in this scenario, EDP on multiple occasions would block them and then disengage from them. And for whatever reason, it was usually, though, because he was afraid of getting caught, not because he was afraid of, destroying a child's life forever. So, but he would come back, and every time he came back, the decoy would kind of play this like a guilt game, where it's like, oh, I can't believe that you left. You really upset me. You hurt my feelings. So when it got to the point where EDP almost blocked him again and didn't show up, they basically, I guess you could say, they were really forceful, and they guilt tripped him into coming, which I think was brilliant on their part, because they were able to basically set up a scenario where they made him feel bad for making her feel bad.
I have like mixed feelings on that.
Why?
Well, to get into like what started us talking about this is we were talking about it in the car, and I, brought up the question of like, at what point is trying to catch someone sufficient?
Right. Okay. I think I understand what you're saying, like, how far is too far? So this is something I think that we need to pretext this with a thought, like, not a thought experiment, but something for you guys to think about is, and let's retract a little bit from EDP and think about this more generally when it comes to predators. So there's an argument to be made across the board, regardless of whether it's predatory behavior or anything, that if you don't have access to a particular thing, then you won't engage with that particular thing. And like let's bring it to something a little more a little less charged. Let's say you're somebody who loves I don't know, candy, but you live in an area that doesn't make the candy you love. You obviously can't engage with that candy, and it's going to make you less likely to engage with that candy or candy in general, right? Does that make sense? And so one of the things, it's a little bit of an ethical dilemma when it comes to generally, like, you know, trying to expose child predators is like, well, if they didn't have the access to the decoy, would they have actually engaged in the behavior in general, or would they have given up? And I know that's a harsh take. It's a tough thing to think about, but I think it's something to think about. Now, the flip side of that, obviously, too, is like we can't actually prove that these people have no other outlets. Because you could also make the very reasonable argument is like, well, if EDP didn't find this decoy, he may have found another girl and then actually did a thing to that girl. And so it's like, it's a hard thing to traverse. And when we talk about this, I don't really care about EDP because to me, EDP is a person who is completely like cognizant of himself and he's fully aware of himself that's actually trying to groom and harm children. But when it comes to, like, if you ever see some of these people on To Catch a Predator, some of these people, there is something clearly not, we'll say, not right about them. Does that make sense? A lot of these people have some kind of like, it's very clear that there's something off, that they probably have some kind of a disability, and that they are people who you could probably diagnose as predators, people who may have been assaulted when they were younger, and they're just clearly like deficient. Like, it's not like some of them did have like autism, like that. I believe that was proven.
No, I was just going to say, like, even if it's like severe social awkwardness, you know, there's something about them that does not make them fit in with the general population, and like there's something you can't put your finger on it, but you know that there's something off.
Yeah, that's something that's very off. Something that EDP, in my opinion, doesn't have there. That doesn't have it, right? Like EDP, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is like a fully functioning, self-aware individual that this doesn't apply to. But there is something to be said when it comes to these very socially awkward individuals of like, is it, you know, is there an ethical issue there of setting up people that are like deficient in some capacity, to put them in a scenario where they may not have gone into that scenario? Because if you look at it, like I think one of the issues you were having generally is that like how pushy the decoy is.
Well, that's what I was just going to bring up from what you just said about how he was close to leaving, and then they essentially said something to make him stay. Yeah,
like he wasn't going to go at all. He was like, you know, let me not do it. And then they would actually force and be like, no, you should come.
Yeah, to me that, like, I don't know, is that fair?
Fair is a charged word.
I know,
because I don't know if I care how fair this is onto a predator, you know?
No, and I agree with you. It's like one of those icky things, but it's like, you know, like at least, you know, from my perspective and profession, like, you know, all people are to be treated in some way. You know,
I understand, like, from a societal perspective, we try to encourage empathy, and I think we can actually come back to this. We try to encourage like general empathy onto people. And so like this may go against that. Here's actually, I think that this is something maybe that you'll agree with and the chat will agree with. I don't think that the issue is necessarily the setup. I think it's the treatment method once you are caught. Because here's my thing. And this is uncomfortable, but I want you guys to think about it. I don't think that I have to figure out how to express this correctly. Nobody here likes pedophiles. But what I will say is if you haven't harmed a child yet, I think that you are somebody who is worth using our resources as a society to treat that issue. If you've never harmed a child, I think that like based on our society, it's okay for us to allocate resources towards people who have like who who have the desires but have never acted on them.
And I think that it even takes more of that person and honestly earns them a sense of respect if they are able to be like, listen, like I have these problems or these tendencies and like I know it's wrong. So like what can I do about it?
Right. Once you touch the child though,
I don't care.
I don't
Die.
care. Well, we didn't. Okay, you can't say those things on YouTube. You can't say those things, but
they're all thinking it.
I can't disagree.
They could go to an island by themselves.
I can't disagree with you. I can't disagree with you.
But no, like it takes a lot to be able to admit something because, you know, like you always talk about it, that is like the one thing that I think that old people, well, that's a bit, I don't know if I would say that, but like most of the population could be unified on not liking child predators.
Yeah, I think I think most people.
So I think that if you're able to say like I recognize these problems within myself, how do I treat it? That person is worth treating.
Yes, but that's one of the problems, right? Is a lot of times it's people conflate pedophiles to child predators, and they're not necessarily the same thing. And what ends up happening is coming out as you obviously wouldn't do that publicly, but coming out to a therapist that you're a pedophile is tough because socially you're going to be admonished, even though I would say that generally speaking, being a pedophile is a mental disorder. And a lot of people who are pedophiles have had negative interactions when they were younger and they were actually groomed or touched or assaulted or molested. And this is where it was coming to. I think that the ethics of setting someone up isn't a problem, actually. I think the real ethical dilemma here is the treatment method for people who are caught. And like, I think that if you are caught as like, I think that it's hard to say that we should be more accepting in society of pedophiles because it's disgusting, but we need to be more accepting of treating pedophiles. I think that makes more sense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. It's like hard to swallow. Like,
it is because nobody here is comfortable. Nobody here is comfortable.
No,
whatsoever.
and I see like in the chat, people are saying like, no matter what, like it's wrong. Like, yes, it is wrong.
Yeah, 100% always.
Regardless,
wrong.
Yeah. I'm trying to be careful with my words. Like it's wrong, and like we recognize that we're not like advocating or we're not like pro anyone in these situations.
No, but what we're talking about is helping people who haven't hurt children. In general, we're not specifically talking about EDP right now.
No, we're not at all, because I was actually just thinking that as we were saying it, is that from the little bit I saw of what you streamed last night, like this
wasn't even the first time.
Is so like the things that he was saying, it's just like so gross how like the way that he's presenting things, and like it's he's interested in the innocence.
Yes, I don't know if I brought it up. He was very interested in taking that girl's virginity. This EDP is like a next level. Like EDP I wouldn't conflate EDP to like the other people who have something like wrong with them and like are just so like shunned by society.
No, and the thing that you brought up about, which I didn't hear about yesterday or today, was parents are bad. That's creating a sense of like unequalness of like, I'm an older man that could almost be like a parental figure. So like, yeah, no, parents suck, but like I'm a cool adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because at one point he was like, oh, school is bullshit. I got straight A's and look, I didn't need any of it. Like creating like taking these like subtle knocks at people. Yeah, it's crazy. But like that's the one thing though, is because like it seemed like getting caught was a little bit of a deterrent for him, and at the end it took them like really pushing to get him to go, for him to actually go where he may not have gone. Now here's the thing, in my opinion, if he thought he was talking to a 13-year-old, he's already done like psychological damage to that child by getting them to fall in love, because based on the way the conversation was going towards, he thought he got a child to fall in love with him. You know? So, yeah, I mean, but again, I would say like the treatment method, like what do we do with that? I would say like some kind of intense therapy, and like, I don't know.
With someone like the EDP situation, you're saying treatment for him where he actually didn't complete an assault.
It's tough to say because like I want him to go
to the island.
We'll say he wanted to go to the island. How do you like that? That's our way of saying things. But I think that fundamentally as a society that tries to be empathetic, I think our goal should be to rehabilitate people.
Well, that actually could bring us into like what my main question is where is the catch a predator? Like, what is sufficient?
What do you mean?
Because if you're so like he showed signs of backing out, correct? Now this
Yes.
isn't to say that like he wouldn't complete whatever act with another girl. No doubt
But
about
that's
that.
the thing. Yeah.
But
yeah,
when
yeah.
it comes to trying to catch someone, once you establish the interest sexually into someone under 18, I feel like that could, and knowing that they're saying they're whatever age they are, shouldn't that be enough in evidence to want to investigate that?
What do you mean? Sorry, restate that. I think I just had trouble understanding
So like
that.
if so I'm talking about like how far is it, like how quickly could you be sufficient enough? So like if you're already talking to someone like a older man, like EDP or whoever, and like they think that they're talking to someone who's 13 years old, once they're like expressing any romantic or sexual interest in that person, isn't that enough to investigate it?
That's a brilliant point. Okay, that actually gets into a new conversation because unfortunately, that's actually huge. Okay, so this is this thing where, unfortunately, when it comes to predatory people like EDP, the reason the decoy has to go so far is because they have to prove like this point of criminal intent that deserves jail. But if we made the standard not necessarily jail, but some kind of a psychiatric facility where they could be rehabilitated away from being a child predator, all of a sudden the amount of evidence we need to collect is downgraded substantially to the point where if you're talking to a 13-year-old as a 30-year-old, that should be all that it takes for you to be arrested and then put under forced like psychiatric evaluation.
Yes, and
hold on, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Or go to jail. You have those two options. You either go to jail or you can be under like a psychiatric evaluation. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine, but I think like I agree with you, but that also makes, like you were talking about treatment more possible, because if you're getting them at an earlier stage,
right? Yeah,
they're more, what is the word, like I don't know.
There's a word.
It's not rehabilitative.
There's
but you know what I'm saying?
Rehabilitative. Blah blah blah. Now you got me going.
Rehabilitative. You could
I can't
rehabilitate. Anyways,
Yeah,
if you're,
I can't say
you
the
know,
word
if we're
anymore.
saying that, you know, he's just talking to him, you could intervene more effectively to prevent it earlier and to prevent it from escalating to those points. And that's
Yes.
where I question the ethical and morality of the catch a predator thing, because you're pushing them so far, like to that point. And like you said,
Right.
like what if they really never had this opportunity before? And it
Right.
sounds gross to call it an opportunity.
Yeah, we
But
understand the
like, because
context,
that's like
yeah.
has a positive, but you know, what if they never had that before, and now like it's like they get their chance and they're gonna take it? You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. So basically, what she's trying to say is, what she's saying is, okay, let's say, and we're retracting from EDP because he's disgusting, but let's say that's a general predator where there's something wrong with them, and let's say that they never had access to be able to hang out with somebody. They may not. The desire wouldn't rack up as much. And I would compare this to gateway drugs, right? So people always say like, oh, marijuana is a gateway drug. I don't know if it is, but let's just say it is, just for argument's sake. If there's only the only drug you have that's accessible to you in your town is marijuana, it's no longer a gateway drug because there's nothing to progress. But if there's something else there, you'll continue to push through the stages. And so her point is like, okay, if we can create a standard in society where if you are talking to somebody knowingly that they're underage, where that's enough for them to face consequences of having to go get psychiatric help, then not only does it we're getting a little fuzzy. Okay, so not only does that stop them and get them treatment early on, but it stops them from getting comfortable with going further. Because a lot of times in life, people once they start doing something more and more, they become comfortable with it and they don't care so much about the consequences, right? Like if you go to the store and you steal something, you probably feel horrible. But if you kept doing it, you develop a level of comfort.
And you don't get caught.
And you don't get caught.
And there's no negative.
Yes.
Sorry, words.
Yeah, no, there's no consequence
Yes.
for it. You're going to start getting comfortable with it more and more to the point where you're going to have a higher chance of continuing to do it. That's what happens when it comes to like criminal issues where you have young kids get into gangs early. They don't want to do that, but it becomes comfortable because they're doing it over and over again. And so, yeah, no, that was actually quite a revelation. I think that was the best way. I think that like after this conversation, I think that we should make it so that if you even engage conversationally with any level of explicit anything with somebody who's underage, that should be enough for you to be arrested and be put into like a forced therapy program, because I think that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. But unfortunately, these decoys have to go so far because they can't just get like oh, he likes kids. It has to be like, oh, he wanted to physically and emotionally damage a kid.
And then that's the thing also, like say the chances are this person, they went as far as that, went to go meet the young girl and, you know, they were like, oh, you're caught. If they don't have anything else, if they're not talking to anyone else, they have no evidence on their computer, nothing. Like I said, if you're sending pictures of a decoy, that's legal.
Right. So like
if there's coincidentally nothing, then you pushed all that way, and not only did you get him to the point that where they're now comfortable to pursue that with other actual young girls,
got away with it.
But there's nothing to actually hold them accountable legally.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So Jesus Christ, this is too much stuff. So what she's saying is like, okay, he was set up. But let's say anything that he got, like basically under his understanding, he thought he was meeting up with a 13-year-old. But because the facts show that like even if he received pictures that they're not of an underage person and he wasn't actually engaging with an underage person, not only did they have to put in a lot of work to get him arrested, if he did, but it's going to be difficult to get him into jail because he technically wasn't talking with a minor. And so the intention of this decoy scenario is to get him off the streets and not do this again. However, if he gets away with it because they don't have enough evidence to actually put him away, all of a sudden he's going to go back into society and then he's going to be like, well, they didn't catch me the first time. So now I'm more comfortable doing it the second time.
Or I know what I messed up on last time.
Right. Or I know what I messed up on last time.
So how could I get away with it this time?
It's as simple as like, you know, I recognize that when I video chatted them, they had half their face covered. So I'm not going to interact with people who do that. Or there were a few scenarios in the chats where they went to an alternative chat to do stuff, which they couldn't record because of the way the chat worked. What if he decided to do more of that? So that's the thing. And some people brought up Chris Hansen. I think a lot of those people got off because of like it was considered a setup. So I think I'm ready to end this part. I want to talk about the psychological damage on like the decoys.
Oh yeah.
But what I would like to cap off here is I think that we've come to this understanding, and I think that this is something that we should advocate for, where the best course of action is we need to make it so that even just talking explicitly with somebody who's underage is enough to get them arrested so that they can be put into a forced treatment program so that they no longer engage in that type of behavior. Because when it takes so much evidence to get them put away, not only does it make it actually more difficult to put them away, which can make them get off on those charges so that they actually would be encouraged to do it again because they'd be like, well, I know what I did wrong. I can just do it again and I know what I can get away with. I don't know what the other point I was going to make, but the point being that it would be better to not have such high standards when it comes to people who engage in these interactions. Oh, the other thing was like, so not only, I'm all over the place. Not only does it reduce the likeliness of actually getting them into jail, but it also makes the requirement having to get that far, which would increase their comfortability with like doing these things. Whereas if we caught them right at the beginning, right when they were just like expressing like, well, even say flirtations with minors, if you caught them then, there's less conditioning for them to be okay with going further, and we can catch them while they're early and like make it easier to put them into a treatment facility. Did I express that correctly?
You did. I do. Before we get into our next thing, I have a question for you, though. If
Sure.
we were to implement something like this where it wasn't, I guess you didn't have to have as severe behavior to really like pay for it, do you
Well, the payment would justify the. So we would basically like lower the bar on what a crime against a child would be, and then we would lower the punishment to like therapy, so that like.
But that's what I was going to ask you, is that after the completion, so if they were showing like the interest, they're at the interest level,
Yeah,
and they receive that therapy, do you think that they still deserve to have some type of marker?
What do you mean
for them on society of like being a registered offender or something like that?
Okay, so what you're saying is if we downgrade it to a point where they haven't actually harmed a child yet, would it be fair to put them onto a registry of like of somebody who may be a harm to children? That I don't know if I can answer that right now, because that is a really great question. I don't know, because it's one of those things where I do think that they need to learn from it, but like you could potentially scar them for less. See, this is one of those things. If you do something like you put like a registered sex offender, it's to protect other people, and it makes sense. But like usually that's loaded with they did a bad thing. So if they didn't get to a point where like they actually physically harmed a child, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with that. That's a tough answer though. That's a tough.
I mean, I have my own opinions on like a lot of things like within like the sex offender registry, but particular to this, like if you are able to intervene, I feel like maybe not having those labels like that would be beneficial, because the person could still be part of society in a productive way, and B, I honestly think that it would make it more welcoming for people to come forward, because I think that's one of the major parts of it is that if you express that, like you said earlier, like society is going to look at you like as a predator even if you haven't acted on it.
Yeah, right.
And there's fear in that. Saying. You don't want to be labeled as that negative thing,
right?
And how could that impact me later in life when you know you're trying to like be a good person?
Yeah, so what she's saying is that like the goal here is to get people, because I know there's new people in the chat, is we're separating pedophiles from child molesters, right? If having the action or having the desire doesn't mean that they've committed. Once they've committed the offense, we want to put them on an island, is what we've been saying. But before they do that, if we can encourage them to come forward and get mental health help, that's the goal. And so like instead of putting them on a registry though, what I would say is I think that they would have to I think that they'd have to have almost maybe lifelong parole, where like they'd have to see a therapist at least once. Like, so let's say like it would start off with 3 times a week, and then as they got on, maybe they got to a point where the therapist like, oh, they're doing really well, now it's once a week, maybe once a month. But I think that they should have to at least do maybe once a month for a long time.
This is something I almost like want to sit on, and I feel like this could be a bigger topic for us.
Yeah. So I think that we've satisfied that. Sounds like she's trying to normalize it. I think that if you think she's trying to normalize it, you need to not come to my stream late and actually listen to the conversation. We're talking for 40 minutes, and like I'm gonna be honest with you. We can't sit here and just pander to you for not like showing up and not thinking critically, because that's not what we're trying to do. So you maybe go back and watch it again on my podcast channel after we put it up. Moving forward, one of the things I don't think people are talking about enough is the fact that like the decoy has to put themselves in this situation, and as you watch the video of the decoy that wasn't even in the situation, as you watch the video, it looked like they were really like distressed by it. And it was like upsetting to watch how like for lack of a better term, unraveled this young woman. She wasn't even the decoy in this scenario, but she was getting very frustrated. And like I imagine like how that has to really like weigh on your mind quite a bit.
Like, yeah, my first question is like, how does someone even get into this role? You know, is this like something that's seeked out for? Is this something that's more like Dog the Bounty Hunter? You know what I mean? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so like how do you get into it? I would imagine that these girls already look young as it is. And so like, I don't know, part of me, and this is speculative, they may have had an interaction when they were younger that made them motivated to try to catch people and get these types of people off the street.
But that's the thing. Yeah. So like even like employing, I would even think that the person employing these people would have some level of guilt. I hope that these people that are acting as the decoys, like that in their job, there's some sort of like therapeutic treatment.
There probably isn't.
Set in,
There
because
probably isn't. It's a smaller YouTube channel.
You know, just even like as a social worker, like where we preach trauma or compassion fatigue, where you're working with people constantly and you're hearing their trauma and they're hearing your stories, and it becomes traumatic to you. You know, there's things like, I mean, you know this firsthand, like I not to get into, but like I've told you things that it affects you.
Right, yeah.
You know,
and the girls are the ones talking to them and building the relationship with them.
And they have to take on the personality of being this 13-year-old.
Yeah, which could be
they have
triggering
to act
for them.
as that 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And so they're really the ones that are being predatorized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're saying the decoys are the ones. Yeah, no, I agree. The decoys are actually the ones being predatorized, because they have to emotionally step into a role of a child, and then they have to show or feign. They have to feign legitimate interest in somebody who is like a net loss to society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really disgusting. And it's really mentally straining, I feel like.
And that's also one of my arguments towards like how far does it truly need to go? Because just establishing that that person is interested in a 13-year-old is like disgusting enough. But now you're going to push yourself to the point to, because it's a decoy, manipulate this person into seeing you. Because it's a decoy, it's manipulation. Whether it be
even if it's a manipulation,
or not.
Even if we agree that it's a positive manipulation, it is manipulation.
I could just imagine that being a gross feeling.
Right, but I would take it in another direction. I remember hearing about a guy who worked for like the FBI, and his job was to like catch people who were exchanging child images, and he ended up getting conditioned into liking child images. And so like, what if this is almost a form of Stockholm syndrome, where this decoy starts to actually develop feelings for EDP? And that's the part that really fucks me up. Like, do you think that maybe they start to feel bad for this guy, or like they start to develop a feeling? And like, how mentally distressing is it to put yourself in a situation where you have to pretend like you're a kid, and then you have to basically get somebody to fall in love with you,
get a full like grown-ass adult to fall in love with
who's
you,
attracted to children. And like, you have to condition yourself to like say positive things when they say gross things to you. And then it's almost like you're falling for, like, what if this girl was falling, like, you know, like not falling for them, but like almost gaslighting themselves into having some kind of empathy or attraction towards any predator.
The way that, like, even from what I saw last night is like, you know, you have to like invest yourself into this, and it's, you know,
because this happened over a month. It took over a month.
Yeah, so it's hard not to, like, who could really truly separate themselves from their private life and work? You know, even if it's not publicly, internally, in your mind. You know, in a month, building a month-long relationship. I mean, like, think about where we were after a month of dating. You know what I mean? Like, that takes a lot.
Yeah, right. No, that's actually a really good point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Oh, I'm good to go?
Yeah.
No, like, you develop feelings for somebody that you date, and they were kind of dating to a point where like they would develop, like, I wouldn't doubt that she developed feelings. And
that's the thing. It doesn't even have to be romantic or sexual feelings towards him, but you're interacting with the person constantly. You're going to develop some sort of empathy or sympathy, and even enjoy aspects of the conversation. Were they ever talking about like everyday things?
Constantly, yeah.
So like, she was doing it from the perspective of a 13-year-old, but even in that, like, when you're an actor, you take your own life experiences to make your role seem real. So the conversation that these decoys are having are probably very realistic on their part.
No,
you know
absolutely. I agree. Yeah, no, and that's like one of those things. And I think that they're putting themselves in a difficult situation. And there are people in the chat who are like, oh, well, that's why you need a team. The thing is like, first of all, this is a smaller operation, so they don't have like a whole team to do this. But either way, there has to be one person talking to him, because the nuances of these conversations are picked up, whether it's intentionally or subconsciously, and that would turn him away. So if you're trying to catch EDP and you put 4 people on the messages, you're not catching them. You need one person who understands the little things about them, who can continuously get them to a point where he will get to, like, incriminate himself enough so that they can put him away.
Especially a person like EDP, because he was looking for it.
EDP's
he
like
was
a
so
special
manipulative.
kind of
If he
piece of
saw
shit.
like one sentence, like if she never ended her sentence with periods and like one came with a period, that would have set him off.
Honestly, yeah, because he already got worried enough where he was like, I'm gonna block this person. Then he would come back once he like got the, I guess he was feeling like he wanted to pursue again. So like yeah, somebody EDP who I would say is incredibly methodical, very manipulative, like very much like looking like very like very calculated in how he wanted to emotionally manipulate a girl. I think he would pick up on just like small differences, like, you know, even somebody being more aggressive at some point and less aggressive at another point. It's you really need a person, and like it's just gotta fuck them up. I think that what you said before made the most sense. I think that there needs to be like some kind of a therapy provision. Problem is that this is a small sting operation. I can't see it happening.
Exactly, and that's why I said, is this something like Dog the Bounty Hunter, or is it something that is like more organized and more in line like with the state and whatnot? And maybe,
what do you mean by that? Do you think that you're saying we should set up like an institution that would help people catch child predators?
I don't think that that's a bad idea, especially if we move towards what we said we would advocate for before.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
If we were looking to like intervene earlier to still make these people productive members of society, then yeah, things should be more organized and official.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But you also wouldn't have to get to the Jesus Christ.
I know you moved and it's still happening.
No, they hear the fucking thing out there.
That's what I'm saying. Like it used to happen at your house.
Yeah. But anyway, what the hell is this? Oh yeah, it would also reduce the emotional impact if we were able to set a standard where you could catch predators before they actually went fully through with it. Once they show intent to like chat with like a young person, if we caught them then, it also would reduce the mental stress of these decoys who have to put themselves in these scenarios.
And if we are pushing them now, whoever their like employing entity is, if they're actually pushing them to the point of trying to get that man to come meet them, and do they send those girls out?
I think it depends on. So like in this scenario, all we had gotten so far, they haven't released the footage, is like grown men like being like, "Oh, do you know that you're here to meet a 13-year-old, right?" They do it at apartment complexes. They say, "Oh, we live at this apartment complex. I'll come to the front." This way, they don't have to have anybody potentially knocking on someone's door. Because again, they don't have the financial capabilities or the facilities to like rent the house out and then like, "Oh, hey, we're coming in. It's Chris Hansen."
You know, even if there was like other people there, and I would say if you're sending a girl that looks, I'm pointing to the screen, that looks like these like 13-year-old girls, you know, even if they're of age, if they are sending them into public, even if they have a team of like big beefy men, like they're to protect her, like that's still extremely scary. So I'm curious if that is a thing.
Yeah, because it's not just like physically intimidating, it's also like emotionally intimidating,
because now you think you're the 13-year-old and he's coming to get you.
Yeah, but also we talked about how like they're basically grooming themselves into like you know, and so like what happens where I don't know, like they might feel bad or they might have second thoughts or like I don't know. It's just a lot. So
I see a lot of people in the chat. Move on to questions? Yeah, kind of.
I think we've satisfied that. So let's move on to questions. We're gonna prioritize people who like 20 bits. You throw out the 20 bits, we'll answer whatever question you want.
Can I just?
I'm gonna. Okay. We're gonna put this over your face because fuck you.
You can sub with Amazon Prime by putting exclamation point
These aren't
Prime
actually
in
questions.
the chat.
We're still gonna play them.
Okay. Let me know when I talk.
I can tell Mama Gut is starting to feel more confident when talking to the podcast.
You're feeling more confident.
Which is awesome. Proud of you, Mom.
Yeah.
Egg.
Yeah, we had a good conversation, I think. Thank you so much, Johnny. What is that?
Join Ariel
for the sub. Okay, so what's the question that you wanted to answer?
So there was a couple of questions asking us about EDP and prison or jail time. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into it where like I'm not exactly familiar with what earns a person jail time when it comes to like interacting with young people in the way that he was. And so, like I said earlier, if he's interacting with a decoy and everything is legal, and there's nothing else that he has that proves that he talks to underage people or is in possession of underage things, then based on our justice system, no.
Yeah, what she's saying is like, she's not saying it's right. What she's saying is if he got a decent lawyer and they were like, oh, but it wasn't actually a 13-year-old. Any pictures that were sent wasn't actually a 13-year-old. So you have no real proof that he interacted. He was never going to harm this 13-year-old. All of a sudden, he may not get anything, which is why we were talking about lowering the standards, making it easier to catch people before they even meet anybody. Get them if they express that they're attracted to young people. Boom, catch them then and put them in a program where they get forced therapy so that we can basically de-radicalize them, I suppose. So we're talking about a whole restructuring of the way that we interact with people who are attracted to children. I think that makes sense. Yeah. So that's how much time do I think that he should get? I mean, me personally, with the intent to try to meet a child and like actually harm them, I think that he should get, you should get a pretty big punishment.
See, but that's my thing. Like, is that punishable?
I don't know if it is. I don't want that person to exist anymore. Because, see, this is the problem, is that if we caught them early before they made, like, some of these people may, and then we're pulling it back from EDP, some of these people may not have ever engaged, but they're constantly kind of coerced by the decoy to go and, like, push beyond a boundary they may not be comfortable with. So if we could just catch them right at the beginning, before they got comfortable with trying to actually sleep with kids, we might be able to de-radicalize them, because their brains are like, oh, I'm attracted, but I'm guilty. If we could harness that guilt and get them to no longer be attracted to children, put them in a treatment area that, like, helps them, we don't need to even speculate about what would happen if they ever slept with somebody, because they wouldn't. Because I think that there's probably a healthy amount of fear with most people where they wouldn't want to actually do the thing, even if they have the desire. So if we catch them when it's just a desire, boom, we can stop it. But if it gets to a point where they're like comfortable with doing it, that's not good.
So are you considering going to meet them comfortable doing it?
It's too comfortable to me, yeah.
See, I kind of disagree with you there.
No, but see, here's the thing. Like you said, if they get a good lawyer, EDP will probably get off. So now EDP went through the whole process, met the person, was comfortable enough to actually do it, even if they were coerced. And let's say he gets off. Now he knows, like you said before, what not to do, so he won't get caught if he actually engages with an actual child.
Okay. I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah. And like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's tough. It's a very tough scenario. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about, or if there's any other questions. But I feel like we've talked a lot about this. We've actually got a good runtime.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, how the FBI person was trained to detect children. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You send me bits. All right, I'll play the alerts. Okay, let's see what we got here. Teabagging Mama Gut is the first one.
It's almost like Papa teabagging Mama Gut.
Yeah, it does look like Mama Gut. Yeah. This is probably inappropriate for the topic we're talking about, huh?
Papa, don't you think it's possible that they have a writing team collectively writing the messages? Like a team of writers write a script instead of multiple people sending individual messages, or one person sending all of them.
So this person basically said, like, I don't know if you've read it here.
No.
Do you think it's possible that they had a team of writers writing a script for the girl to read? I don't think it's possible to have a team of writers write a script for this type of thing, because it has to be on the fly.
It has to be so organic.
And it has to be organic. So there's no way to write a script. You really, from an effectiveness perspective, that would actually get the person caught. You would have to have one person who got comfortable with EDP and like pretended to be like basically in love with him, which can unfortunately like condition yourself into actually creating feelings, you know?
I think that if anything, like there probably is some sort of preparation before these girls start, where they're like, okay, like talk about these things. If they say something like this, maybe this is a way that you respond to it.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
But I think that, like I said, it has to be organic. They're going to be able to tell, especially someone like EDP, they're going to be able to tell when someone's being fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're looking for that young girl.
I agree 100% with that. Yeah. Somebody's like, why not restrictions on social media that disallow certain people of ages? Yeah, sure. You could.
That's what is happening now.
Yeah,
and then people
that.
lie.
Yeah, the people lie. Yeah, no, so we already kind of have that. I don't know that that's necessarily.
I would say that OnlyFans is very successful in like blocking who's joining.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we had to go to that extent, maybe something like that.
Okay, I think that that's pretty satisfactory for today's chat. I think today went pretty well. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Hey everyone, if you liked that video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow my Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and TikTok. All links are in the description. Also, check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me even more than you already do. Thank you so much, everyone. I love you all.